In this episode, I talk with a woman, a good friend of mine, who has a phenomenal level of integrity and grit and kindness and caring. Cara Wright. She's a good friend, has been an access consciousness facilitator for years, was a prenatal yoga teacher, owned her own yoga studio, and was a birth doula for many years. If you don't know what a doula is, it's a hands-on birth assistant, a woman who supports you in pregnancy and childbirth. And she spent her life in this energy of desiring to contribute to women in the birth process. And as we were talking, I actually split our conversation into two episodes because they were two different topics, and both I know are going to be such a contribution. So this one is about her personal journey with infertility. So working in that field and then trying to get pregnant for years unsuccessfully, and how that affected her, her body, her marriage. And she is now happily with her husband and her pack of dogs. You'll learn more about that journey. And also later on with her body, ending in a hysterectomy, and how she found peace and ease with all of it. If you know if this episode will contribute to someone, please share it. Enjoy this episode. And if you haven't heard the other one with Cara, please have a listen. That's a lot about neurodiversity and being and feeling different, and being a Gen Xer, both her and I, how that really wasn't a word back then, and how she dealt with a lot of the things that made growing up difficult, and how now she's thriving in her life. So enjoy the episode and give me a DM or reach out to Cara and let us know how it contributed. Welcome to the Shift Your Vibe to Thrive podcast. My name is Emily Evans Russell, and I'm a single mom, multiple six-figure business owner, and master mindset and energy coach. I created this podcast with two main targets. One, to give you practical tools so that no matter where you are in your life right now, you not only know that things can shift, but you know how to make them greater. And two, to change your frequency so that you become an energetic match for everything you desire. I'm talking your relationships, your finances, your success, all of it. Think of this podcast as your weekly energetic upgrade with a mix of subconscious mind hacks, ways to quantum leap, and consciousness shifts. A place where you learn to sculpt your reality and actually finally truly have the magical life you deserve, and one that works for uniquely you. Are you ready to uplevel your reality? I think I hear yes, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. Thank you so much for being here. And now let's go to the show. Today I have Cara. Hi.
Hello.
You are one of my favorite people in the whole world. And can I just say, like, a really phenomenal friend?
Aw, I feel the same way about you.
I like to think of you and myself, I'm kind of like a dog where I really like my people, and I like my pack of people that I really like. I'm in, and you're one of my pack, even though I don't live with you, but you actually have a pack you live with.
Yes.
You used to be a doula, and if people are listening and don't know what that is, I want you to explain a little bit what that is, and then what your personal struggle was.
Yeah.
And what that led to in your life as the world being and really difficult.
Yeah. I think I had a job for 1 year out of college, and I was like, I can't do this. So I was like looking for other things to do. And I ended up, at the time, I went and got certified in yoga. I started teaching yoga. And then I just happened to see this tiny little ad in the back of a yoga journal magazine about prenatal yoga. And it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, I just knew that's what I was going to do.
Yeah.
Funny story. I got a degree in community health education, which is like a Bachelor of Science. It's like back in the Clinton era where everything was like preventative medicine. And so then I decided, okay, I'm going to go do this prenatal yoga thing. Everyone thought I was crazy because they were like, why would you specialize like that? Like, who's going to want to do prenatal yoga? And I was like, I don't know, I'm going to go do it though, because that's me. I'm always the redheaded stepchild.
Yeah.
I will always do things a little off center. I might go in the direction the crowd is going, but I'm going to go a little like northwest. Anyway, so I went and did that. And I was like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years into doing prenatal yoga. And it's so funny now because it is like such a big thing. Now everybody's heard of prenatal yoga. Back in the day, There was like, I live in Spokane, Washington. It's not like a small town by any means. There was like one postnatal yoga teacher, like one person. And like when I became a doula, there was no doulas. Like that was a whole thing that, and I just accidentally became a doula by having my students wanting me to come to their births. Because the type of yoga I taught, it wasn't just about yoga. It was like I taught about everything going on in the physical body during pregnancy and everything going on, you know, birth. And I mean, it was like a full thing. It wasn't just like come in and do a down dog with a belly.
Right.
So 3 or 4 years into my yoga, I was at my mom's house and I was looking through all my old stuff, you know how you do. And I found my final project for college. It was kind of like my thesis was healthy mothers, healthy babies. And I
Wow.
had not even remembered that I freaking did that. I don't know if I would say it's a calling because that's so weird and significant, but it's like I knew that that's what I was going to do. And I remember people telling me I was fucking crazy for doing it. And it just became this whole thing. I had my own yoga studio for 10 years, 15 years. I taught for like 15 years, prenatal and postnatal. I was a doula for 13. I attended thousands of births. So a doula is someone who actually like supports the woman, but also like the family unit, you know, like oftentimes I was more there for the man than the woman.
Yeah.
And then I realized later on in my life that I was so aware of energy. I was actually aware of the babies too. Like there were some women who hired me and I'm like, why the hell did this woman hire me? We did not have a thing, but the being that was coming to be the baby was the one who pulled me in. So
Wow.
I really got this very like secondary, very subtle education on energy and like how aware I actually was. The same thing that made me a crazy kid. Like it was like I used it a lot.
I had a doula at both of my births, and the first one I did in a birth center. I would have afterwards, I was like, having her there was priceless.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a 40 some hour labor,
Yeah.
and the place we were in, the hot water ran out because all I wanted to do was be in the shower and just have the water hit my back. And it was like,
Yeah.
Luke, it wouldn't, something was wrong. And they couldn't get it past hot. And this woman was filling up cups of water in the microwave and then
Wow.
pouring them down my back so I could
Yeah.
stay kind of, and then after so many hours, like you said, she was energetically aware. She also did some energy work on me. And at the time, again, I thought I knew nothing, but I was like, do whatever you want. It feels it feels great. And all the sessions with her leading up to the birth where I got to know
Yeah.
her. And then after I just was not able, like I was stuck at 7 centimeters forever. And she said, you know what? We're going to try this thing. I'm going to tie a sheet around your belly and I'm gonna reposition the baby for you because the
Yep.
head's just not. And she was amazing, and she did that, and then the head got right, and then I continued to dilate, and
Yep.
and that was my first one. I had her naturally, and I was like, that was priceless to have her there. It was in an experience that it's an amazing. I just want to say I could so knowing you and everything we've talked about, like the gift you are for women for that. So tell me, so then you're doing this as your job. You're married
Yes.
because you've known your husband since high school.
Yes. Yeah. So we got married. We were both in our 30s when we finally got married. And like anything, we decided. So in my like all of my 30s, I basically was trying to get pregnant. That was like because that was my big target. I mean, I'm gonna do the thing that I had been helping all these women do, and it didn't work. And I went for years and years and years trying and trying and trying. And it didn't I mean, there wasn't anything obviously wrong, there wasn't anything like, who knows? It was one of the most just really frustrating parts of my life because there was like, for any of you that have gone through infertility, there's always somebody around the next quarter who says things like, well, I just, looked at the sun every morning at 6 a.m. for 30 days and I ate this particular nut and I got pregnant. It was one of those, like, I don't even know how to describe it, but it basically, like, I ended up coming out of that experience really just feeling broken on like all sorts of levels. And I was very private about it. Like, none of my clients knew I was trying to get pregnant for all those years because I wasn't going to like go bleed on people.
Yeah.
like I was teaching prenatal yoga every, 4 or 5 times a week. I was around women having their babies. I was going to births, and I was like dying inside because I was trying to do something that wasn't working. Nobody could tell me why it wasn't working. And infertility is like a hamster wheel of magnitude that you can't get off. And I really like got to a place where for me, it was like, what the fuck am I going to do? Because if I don't actually like succeed at this, I've like put all of my eggs in this basket. Like, what am I going to do? Because I was getting to the point where I didn't want to do yoga, prenatal yoga anymore. I didn't want to be around anyone. I didn't want to be around pregnant women. I didn't want to go to, like, I was just getting to that point. And I was like, what am I going to do? Because when you like are so specifically going towards a target and you think that that's all that your future is, and it's not happening, it is very, I don't even know what the word is, debilitating, maybe. I was
Yeah.
incredibly depressed. I was having massive anxiety. I was having panic attacks. I was actively destroying my marriage because I had decided he deserved better.
Well,
Like I completely collapsed into myself. Like I was the wrong one. My body was shit. It wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. And it was one of the most, and I wouldn't say for the whole time it was like that, but it just, you know,
compound.
devolved over time to
Yeah.
end up being just this like, ugh,
So how
yeah.
did you change it? What changed?
Well, I mean, I tried everything that I was willing to try. One of the things that was really difficult was my sister also never conceived, but she went the route of adoption. And that was something that she always knew she was going to do. She actually adopted. My nieces are from China. Like my sister, I remember her talking about that when we were like in junior high. Like she knew that that was going to be her thing. So that was really easy for her. And I remember people being like, well, why don't you just adopt? Like there's this like, I'm sure it's
Well-meaning.
well-meaning people. There's my dyslexia coming out.
Yeah.
But it's like the last thing, I knew that wasn't going to work for me. I knew I didn't desire to adopt. At this point, we don't have children. We have dogs. We have a pack. And like my husband and I look at each other and like, dodged a bullet there, man. Like we totally just, if we had had children, that would have been fine and great. But I really when I really, really look at it, what I wanted was the experience of the pregnancy and the birth
Wow.
and the baby. But the kid part, I don't know. Like, I'm actually like, I know that sounds funny, but it's like,
No,
this is like
I
what
get
we
it.
do, right? It's like when you get into this, like, no, this is what I'm doing, and you don't actually like have that full energy or depth and breadth of what that actually is. Like, we do so many things where it's like, I was really awful to myself for years.
Wow.
And at the end of the day, it's like, it's fine. Like, it's fine that it didn't like go the way I thought it should go.
Yeah. Like you said, you guys have both been like, wow, that's actually even greater than you
Yeah.
would have planned or thought that you wanted in the
Yeah.
moment.
And I mean, you're kind of taught, or maybe it was our generation, but you're kind of taught here to set goals, to
Mhm.
have idea where you're going to go. And if you really look at it, that's what fucks most people up. Because it's like you're not actually being present in the moment of like what's fun for you. It's like, no, most of us are like slogging through like shit in order to get to some friggin' target that we don't even end up wanting when we get there.
Well, I listened to what you just said and a target or a goal, but then we don't ask questions because when you just
No.
said that so beautifully, you're like, I was really desiring the pregnancy and the birth. Well, how I hear you say that, and I hear how much you loved working with pregnant women and
Yeah.
being first. So you were aware of an energy that
Yeah.
you really, really congruent with you. You like to be
Yeah.
around. And then without asking a question, what it shows up like is, well, then I must have a kid. But what if it were just the energy? But then you're so
Yeah.
caught in the wrongness and the goal and what society, and I'm married, we're happy. Of course I should.
Everybody wanted us to have kids.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I would have loved to have a little like for me, adoption was never going to be a choice because I wanted the baby to be my husband's.
Yeah.
like I adore him so much. I'm like, I will create another thing like you on the planet. Like, let's do that.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it's like for me, like, how people do the whole like they have other ways where children come to them. And I remember there was an herbalist I was working with at the time, and she's like, and I was just distraught. And she's like, well, what would happen if you woke up tomorrow and there was a baby on your doorstep? What would you do? And I was like, I don't think I'd want it.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean? And in that moment, I used that as the most intense weapon against myself, because I was like, oh my God, that's why I'm not getting pregnant, because I really don't want it. And I'm sabotaging it. Like, I went into like, this is why this isn't happening. Like, this is how wrong, awful, and evil I am. And I remember thinking, well, I'm not willing to give up coffee, so I must not want it that bad. But it wasn't from the space of like, well, what would I actually like to have? It was more of a space like, how big of a piece of shit are you that you say you want to have a baby, you've been trying for all these years, but you won't give up coffee? Like,
Oh my
that
God.
is the torture that I put myself through
Yeah.
for years. All on my, like, I didn't talk to people about this. I didn't talk to my husband. I didn't talk to people about it. I don't even know if I would have known that I was doing it enough to talk about it. Like,
Mhm.
I'm sure if I had mentioned to somebody, they would have been like, that's a little crackpot. But I didn't say it to anybody. It was all internal.
Gosh. And then where did it start to shift?
Change.
Like,
So,
yeah.
like, I was smart enough to like try to do something, because I knew my mental health wasn't well.
Yeah.
Like, I knew I was floundering. And so I did acupuncture, and I did different like techniques. And I had a friend who was doing EFT, the tapping technique. And so I would do sessions with her. And she also did like meditative, where she would walk you through stuff. I can't remember what it was called, but it was like, some sort of like a meditative hypnosis type of thing. And those things would help, but they would help for like a short period of time. And she actually sent me a short video about a modality called access bars. And I was like, I think so desperate at the time. And I also remember making a demand, because I do think energetically, like, we make the demands of what's going to show up for us. Right. And
Mhm.
I remember standing in my living room and being like a mess. I knew I was a mess. I knew I was destroying my marriage. And I was just like, I just have to get off this fucking wheel. I just felt like this hamster wheel. Because when you're trying to get pregnant, it's every month.
Yeah.
Every fucking month. You get no break. You just don't get a break. Even if you're like, oh, I could have not had sex that month to give myself a mental break, and I still would have gone into it. I still would have gone into like the upset. I remember exactly where I was standing. I remember exactly what I was wearing. And I made this demand of like, this has to stop. Like, this has to change. I don't know if I would have known I was suicidal at the time, but like, I just knew this wasn't working. And so, like, less than a week later, I had someone just send me a video of Dr. Dane here talking about access bars. And I was like, I don't know what this is. I don't even really remember what the video was, but there was a bars class near me. It was like a couple hour drive, but I went to a bars class and I got my bars run. And that's when things started to change. Because it actually, like, with the bars, they dissipate all of those thoughts, feelings, and emotions. I was just a huge nest of non like, none of it had to do with me, none of it was mine, all of it was just what you kind of pick up slogging through the world. It's just like, and so that was the beginning of me being able to actually go like, hang on, and like really truly realizing like, maybe I actually just didn't desire. Like, I remember there was a facilitator that I went and did a class with, and she said, from this lovely place, because I had had so many people over the years, just, I know they were trying to be helpful, but just say the most horrible things to a person in that state. And but I remember her saying to me, and she just was super, she's like, well, do you desire to have kids? And I was like, holy fuck, that was the first time where I actually was like, really looked at the fullness of it, like, not just like you said, the energy of what I was really interested in.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh God, I don't, that might be no, that might be that I don't think I did. And so then that was the beginning of like just changing my perspective. And it was a very slow change. It wasn't like I got my bars run one time and I was like cured, but it over time has been such a gift to be able to, because what it does is it allows you to have a different perspective.
Yeah.
And prior to that, I could not get out of that perspective that I was stuck in.
I think
Which,
you described it so well
Mhm.
because it's like the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, like you were literally
Oh,
torturing, easy for me to say, yourself with them. And so when those are out of the way,
totally.
it's funny because I mean, we've talked about this, but I also discovered access bars after the birth of my second daughter. And that one didn't go like I planned, the home birth and natural. And so I literally thought I had ruined her life by having an emergency C-section. You know, we tried to do it at home, it didn't work. And everyone just said, but you're both healthy, you should be fine. And I had never in my life experienced depression. And
Right.
now looking back, I was like, oh, I was having postpartum depression. I couldn't name her at first. I couldn't connect with her, all of this stuff. And I also had that demand in my world. You know, at the time I was meditating and doing yoga and it wasn't changing. I was like, I cannot mother
Yeah.
like this. I can't be here for her. I can't be here for my older daughter. I can't be here for the family. This has to change. And same thing, so like access bars, someone mentioned it that I was going like another holistic provider that did a lot of different stuff. She said,
Yeah.
well, it's this thing that can kind of get you out of your own way and your thoughts. And I was like, okay, I
Yeah.
guess I'll try that. And it
Yeah.
was such a relief from that, what I'd been, all the thoughts and the feelings and the wrongness I'd been torturing myself with, like they start to really, it's like pressing delete on that one, delete on that one, delete on that one. So you can
Yeah.
find you again, you know?
Yeah. And the thing that I loved about it and I so appreciated about it is I didn't have to fucking talk about everything.
Yeah.
So fucking sick of talking about everything. You know what I mean? Like, and ugh, I was
Done.
so, and there's so many modalities out there that like that's the crux of it, right? You tell your story, and I'm just like, fuck that. I'm so done.
Done.
Because you know, as much as I didn't like talk about it like with the world, like with my students or my clients, like I, you know, when I would go to different all the things I had done up to that point, you had to tell your story. And I was so fucking sick of my goddamn story. So sick of it that I just that was such a relief to me. And to just have things change without me having to try to change them
Yeah.
was a gift.
So then you get out of that and you've recently had a hysterectomy and had fibroids and had to also really shift and be different with your body. Can you tell
Totally.
us a little bit about that shift?
So it's like, you know, that was like I've been, you know, getting my bars run for 10, 11 years. So that like all of that pregnancy stuff was like in my mid to like early, you know, 30s
Yeah.
basically. And, you know, now I'm like 48. And so like started getting my bars run, started to have a different sense of like I could have a different kind of future, started creating a completely different life. Like we're very happy, my husband and I, you know, like I have my animals and you know, I have this lovely life. And I started to, and you know, during all of the years that I was trying to get pregnant, one of the things that was so frustrating is they couldn't, there was nothing physically wrong with me. I got all the tests done, I did all the things, and there was nothing physically wrong with me. And so like that's frustrating because then how do you fix it if you don't know what's, you know, wrong?
Yeah.
So but like just as like right in the beginning, like right before COVID or just as was starting to happen, I started noticing like my periods were just like hellacious. And I was always someone who knew when I was ovulating too, because I was one of those people that had the pain, you know, when your
Yeah.
ovaries, like I'm just like very sensitive to my body. Like there's a gentleman that I've gone to for years, a chiropractor, and he does other things too, but he's always like, you're the princess in the pea. Like I'll go in and I'm like, there's this thing going on. And he's like, I don't even see what you're talking about. But to me, it feels very like it's intense.
Yeah.
And so he's like, he's always called me the princess and the pea. So like I started to just feel uncomfortable and I kind of played around with like supplementing my hormones and things like that. And like, I just, and then COVID happened and I wasn't about to go and have like any sort of surgery. I did go to a doctor and, actually have them look, which was that's a whole other episode probably. Because I'm not, I have a healthy, I don't know if it's distress, but like, I'm just not somebody who goes to a doctor. Again, I do not do authority.
Yeah.
I'm not somebody who just goes to a doctor because that's going to make me feel better. 9 times out of 10, it doesn't make me feel better. But I ended up going to this gentleman and I did trust him because he was of all the OBs in this whole area. If I knew my client had him as their OB, I knew that they had a higher chance of having a birth that was more congruent with what they were asking for. He just lovely person. So I went to him and I can't remember if it was like, I think it was in the very beginning of COVID, but I went and had an appointment with him and it was before it got real crazy, and he basically said like, you've got all these fibroids. Cause I had gone into thinking like, oh my God, what if I have like something really intense, like ovarian cancer or something. And I couldn't stop obsessing about it. So I was like, I got to go and at least find out what's going on. And he, at that time, said, I recommend you have hysterectomy. And I was like, the fuck I am. I'm not doing that. Like, this was like 2 or 3 years ago. And, like, for a lot of the time that I was a doula, I talk about this all the time. Birth and pregnancy is very black and white. You've got all these people that are very like medically minded. And then you've got the people that are like, naturally minded, crunchy granola. Like I definitely veered over here to this side of like, like I thought the right thing to do was like to do things as natural as possible and all these things. Now with the bars and like starting to have a different perspective and being able to ask like what's going to actually work for me in my body, like that's a different conversation. And I started to realize that it's not about like it's not about like what you choose. It's the energy with which you're choosing it from. It's like, it's not about you had a natural birth or you had a cesarean, but it's like, how did you choose that? Was that actually you choosing it or was it forced on you? Or like, it's more about that around things than the choice, like what you actually ended up doing. But having said that, I was like, when he said that to me, I was like, nope, not doing that. And I literally just didn't call for a follow-up appointment.
Just like, not considering this. Yeah.
And then, fucking COVID happened and we all went into like a weird hole for 2.5-3 years. And during that time, it just kept getting more painful and more painful and more intense and more intense. And I just kind of kept going, thinking that, well, maybe I'm just perimenopausal. And like, once I get through that, then it won't be as painful. And, and then COVID kind of like, to whatever degree it's went away. And I started traveling again because I travel for, my job. And my body just started being like so uncomfortable traveling. And I'm like, I'm going to have to actually like address this. Like, I can't actually keep avoiding what's going on. And that was like a big thing for me. Because it's like, it's like when you have spent a lot of time avoiding something. And also too, like there was a lot in my world from back in the day, like having a hysterectomy was like a failure.
Wow.
So it was another thing that I was looking at going like, God, am I going to fucking fail again? Like, what the hell's going on with like here I am, like, one of my big life purposes is like working with women in all things pregnancy, birth, uteruses, ovaries, and like mine just are like, what the fuck is wrong?
Rather than what's right about this and my
right
body, right? Which I know you're getting. That's why I keep going. This is
and
this is how it shows
I
up.
had those moments too. And this is the thing that I think probably like, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting topic, obviously, to talk about. And if it's interesting to you, like it is because there's some element to it that you're experiencing it. But I mean, it's not like I was like, you're never in one camp or the other. You have moments of this, like lightness and clarity and what's right about this I'm not getting. And like, what if I'm not as fucked up as I think I am? And then you have all the moments of like, I am a complete fuck up.
Yep.
I'm like, and so it just like was really over a period of time. I was like, and my body got to a point where I was like, I had like, I was in like a level of, I was just uncomfortable all the time, all the time, all the time, all the time. And I was like, I really need to look at this. And so I chose to have the surgery. And when I actually like chose it, the level of relief in my body, I couldn't not acknowledge it. Like my body, like I really, my body had been probably asking for a long time for me to choose that choice. And even still then, like there was a few people that I had talked to about that I was choosing the surgery. But I also knew that I needed to be, because I am so fucking aware. I was like, I'm not going to just, this isn't something I'm just going to like tell everybody
Yeah.
because I can't, this isn't an easy choice for me, although I know it's the choice that's going to create greater for me in my body. This is, and I made sure to insulate my environment by not letting people know exactly what was going on, because people have points of view and then they have them in their world and then you're aware of them and you can't avoid any of that.
Yeah.
So
Well, can I point out one thing too that
yeah,
you said when you chose it and you had all this relief in your body? That's often, as we've talked about, what comes from a choice being really congruent with your energy, like your body desire that you did and that relief you felt, and then being aware, knowing, well, now that I have this space, I'm going to do it. I don't need to bring in all these other people with their points of view about it, because you actually found peace with you and what you were choosing in your body.
totally. And that's the thing that beyond having had the surgery, and even though I avoided this choice forever and ever, and then once I did choose it, I was like, okay, I'm choosing it. And I still had a lot of shit in my world about it. You know, I still had to kind of allow that stuff to be there, be present with it, not make myself wrong for it, and just keep going. I created the most, like, every single person that was in my space, like from the person that checked us into the hospital to the nurses that I had before I went into surgery. My friggin' surgeon was, I you know, it's so funny because I picked him 2.5 years before. He suggested, you know, and I was like, I was like, fuck that, dude. And I remember when I went back in, I completely had all this anxiety because I'm like, he told me 2.5 years ago I should do this. And now I'm back, you know, I felt really weird about it because I was like, you know, it was like that weird thing came up, like I should have just listened to him 2.5 years ago. But he was so just like, this is something you choose when you're ready to choose it. And I
Wow.
knew, I was like, that is the guy. Like, that's why I chose him
Yep.
however long ago, even though the minute he said, this is what you should do, I was like, nope. And I just like, you know, flushed him for a bit. And because I mean, that's the thing too. It's like, and hopefully, like, if there's anything out of the story that assists people listening to this, it's like, you don't have to be like, okay all the time.
Yeah.
Like, you can be a hot mess and still move forward and still actually go towards a future that creates greater for you and your body and the people around you and all this stuff. Like, it doesn't, you know, I think sometimes people think like that when they're choosing, you know, what's congruent for them or light for them, it's like all fun and games as you go. And it's like, it's so not.
I just had someone yesterday ask me, oh, but like going into that wrongness we've been talking about, because
Yeah.
I'm having really bad days. And then that means I'm going to actualize and manifest stuff I don't want. I was like, that is one of the biggest lies. You don't have to be high vibe all the time to have like, you're allowed to have you like
Yeah.
these crappy days. And then not make yourself wrong for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean anything.
Nope. Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything. You can still actually, because like I just created this whole, you know, and I mean, was the surgery intense? Totally. Like I had a lot of weird shit going on in there. And I'm so grateful that I actually had the courage to choose having the surgery. And it was really, truly courage. Like it was not something I wanted to choose. Like that was not something that I would have been like, yeah, sign me up for a hysterectomy. Like
That's
at
great.
all.
No.
But I am so grateful that I chose it. And then what showed up too was this sense of like, something just shifted, because when I went through all that infertility, and probably before that, I would say like I just didn't have a lot of trust with myself or with my body. Like I just always felt like my body was like, it's gonna do something weird. And I mean, we're kind of I don't
Wow.
know. This culture kind of breeds that. But I like one of the things that has really showed up for me is that I really know that I know, and I know what's going to work with me and my body, and I know what's not going to work. And I have really stopped forcing myself and my body to do something other than what is going to work for us. And all the way harken back to the day, like for me, school was so intense, and it was not just mentally exhausting, it was physically exhausting. Like my body is also wired very differently. And so I spent a lot of my life forcing myself to do things that were uncomfortable. And I even had created this whole like, well, that's what makes you
Yeah.
successful, is that you continuously force yourself to do shit that you're uncomfortable doing. And it's that so skews your ability to be in the present and choose and be aware of what's going to work for you in your body. Because if you're constantly in that forced state, then that's all you're doing. You're not actually choosing, you're just forcing yourself to do things. And this was such a different departure from that,
Yeah.
because it was like I knew I chose it, I knew I was a little comfortable with the choice, and then after choosing it, I basically was like, I'm going to give myself the space and my body the space to heal, like whatever that looks like. And it was really interesting because there were so many different relationships that I started realizing how much I had created these conditional relationships. And,
Wow.
and when I changed so dynamically, and I wasn't going to like I actually started to put what worked for me in my body as a priority, everything started changing. And you say this all the time. You always say if you change the energy, everything around you changes. This was the most, and I'm getting goosies, like this was the most dynamic experience that I've personally had with me and my body yet this lifetime, of like I changed the energy and everything around me changed. And it's like some of it changed for the good, and some of it was like there were people that really did not respond well.
Yeah.
Then I had to be like, well, I use that part of me that is like, hey, look, I'm sorry you're uncomfortable with how things are, but this is what I'm choosing right now. And you have choice too.
And you choose that comfort for you and your body and what works for you. And like
Totally.
you so beautifully said, when you didn't have to, and with everything we've talked about, like knowing how you had to force yourself to go to school and the physical strain, and then force yourself to go through all this fertility and trying to get pregnant and not, and then pushing your body, and to finally go wait and actually choose something different, and the relief that comes from it. Like that's what I I want people to get from this, is like, and none of that was wrong, because now that you have access to that choice and your
Totally.
world shifts, it's like you always have that. It's like you're picking up all these keys along
Totally.
the way, and some were really hard to get. And now, like, you unlock your world of like, this is what actually brings me peace, and my body, and your dogs, and your husband, and like your
Yeah.
work life, and your travel. It's like everything.
Everything. It just literally like dominoes went through everything. And it's just like, and it's not something that I have to keep like, when you choose things that like, I don't know how to describe this, but it's like you have to keep re-choosing them with like a certain sense of force, because they're not really truly, you weren't really truly like willing to choose it and let the chips fall where they're going to fall.
Yep.
And I literally was like, you know what? If everything and everyone goes away, this is what is I know I'm doing right now. This is what I know is congruent with what I would like to have my life be like 5 years, 10 years from now. And I don't have any cognition of what that is, but it's like, I'm not, this is what I'm doing. And just, I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm just like, I'm not going to do it from a place of like, fuck you. Cause I've done that a lot in my life.
Yeah.
But it was really more just from like, this is what I'm choosing.
I look at that as energy. And like you said, if people in my life are going to go away, we as humans look at that it's somehow wrong. But if you really look at like the energetics of things,
Yeah.
you change, like you made choices that were congruent with you from the inside out. Like you said, there are other ones that don't stick, but when you are really in aligned with that and you're like, this is what I'm choosing,
Yeah.
your whole vibration changes. And just like the way that works energetically is things that are no longer that vibration will fall out. It's not bad. It's not wrong. And
Yeah.
new ones come in.
Yeah.
We just attach a whole bunch of meaning to it. Like it's wrong, but that's really just it's energy, it's vibration, it's what we all are.
Yeah.
And you always, when you shift like that, bring in new that
Yeah.
actually resonate. Always. Yeah.
Totally.
It's so
And I
beautiful.
did, I mean, I've always known that about myself because I am like the person that's just like, and I'm changing gears, like, and everyone's like, "You're fucking nuts! Don't do that." Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll find out. But it's like this one was just, it was a different experience of it, and I'm so grateful that, you know, to be grateful that I chose to have a hysterectomy is like if you had told me that that's where I would be 10, 12
Yeah.
years from when I was like desperately wanting to have a baby and trying to get pregnant, like I would have been like, no, you're fucking nuts. Like that would have been inconceivable.
Yeah.
It would have been inconceivable to me back then to be where I am right now. And I'm so grateful that I am where I am. Like I would rather be this person. Like I like me. I don't know. Like I probably liked me back then, but not in the way that I do now.
That is so beautiful.
Mm.
Thank you. Thank you for being on here. And I will link, I know you have done things for moms and women in the past, like you've talked about, and you have more
Yeah.
that you're creating. So I'll make sure to link in the show notes where you can find Cara and how to work with her and what's coming up. But thank you so much for all of
You're
that.
welcome. Yes, I mean, definitely like I've always been somebody who like one of my favorite things in the world to do is empower people, empower women. And obviously that's one of the reasons why I chose to be a doula. And I do have like, there is something brewing because you just don't go through or choose through something like this. Like there's something there that if I can impart that with people and like assist people in similar situations, like that's what I love doing and being on the planet. So yes, there will be many things in the future. So
And
look,
I will say that is a beautiful way to end because what you just said there is, I think, a takeaway when we're in the hard stuff, it's hard to see. But if you're listening and you take something that you've gone through, like as you said, when you're on the other side, you have a gift to offer other people. And however you'd like to choose that. It can look
yeah,
any way, but that is really such a gift that you can bring to the world and allow you to see all of that in a totally different perspective.
totally.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you got something out of that episode. If you like this podcast, please share it with someone you know who'd find it useful or interesting, and subscribe so that you can listen to past and upcoming shows.